Welcome back to the PR Bunker Podcast, your go-to resource for all things PR, where I dive deep into the trenches of PR and I explore the ins and outs of the PR world through the eyes of a former journalist, longtime PR guy who's been doing this for over 2 decades. We try to uncover secrets, strategies, and stories behind successful PR campaigns as we delve into the good, the bad, and the downright ugly of the industry. And believe me, there's a lot of ugly out there. Whether you're a seasoned PR pro or just dipping your toes into the world of media relations, the PR Bunker Podcast is your ultimate destination for insightful discussions, expert tips, candid conversations with professionals in all types of industries, and we help you navigate the ever-evolving landscape of public relations, media relations, and communications. Grab your headphones, tune in, and we'll get down to the bunker and get to this episode real quick. Let's dive in. What's up, everybody? Don Martelli here with the PR Bunker Podcast, a long time overdue. Today, I really want to talk to you about going back to basics and the basics of crisis communications. And the biggest part with crisis communications, honestly, is being prepared. Failure to have a well-defined crisis comms plan in place is going to lead to disaster every single time. The lack of training and drills for key personnel to respond effectively during a crisis is another point that I wanted to make. A lot of folks think that, we'll just issue a press release or post something on our social media channels and everything's going to be fine. Well, that's not the case. When you're in the middle of a shitstorm, it's really hard to think clearly, focus on what the desired action or actions should be or may be, and it's hard for you to think about an opposition and what they may be doing on their end to create more headaches for you. So being prepared in terms of the tools you can leverage to monitor, the people you need in the room to make decisions, telephone numbers, email addresses, a playbook of some sort, because no crisis communication situation is always the same. There are going to be some nuances, but generally there's a foundation of work in the situation that you can leverage. And it really starts with making sure you have that plan in place and making sure you have the right training and the right key personnel and drills that you've run through to respond to the crisis very effectively. Second point I wanted to make was transparency. Hiding or minimizing the severity of any situation is going to lead to a loss of trust and credibility. And it takes years and 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 years to build a reputation. But it takes absolutely 2 seconds for your reputation to be crushed and lost. It's really hard to rebuild these sort of things. So trying to hide or minimize any severity of the situation is not going to play in your favor. You have to be out in front of it. You got to be transparent. I know transparency is a key word that people like to throw it around at a cocktail party these days, but it's legit. A delayed or incompetent or really incomplete disclosure of information also can cause speculation and rumors to spread, right? You want to be factual. You want to be timely. You want to have background information or links or data, anything you can use in your communications that validates your statement or proves what you're trying to communicate is going to be absolutely critical and will help you in that lane of transparency. The third, which is probably the most critical, is timeliness. If you're not responding in a timely manner, it allows misinformation to proliferate and damage the organization's reputation with every second that goes by. So understand, if you're prepared and you're willing to be transparent and you're able to jump on these things at a moment's notice, it's only going to help you as the proverbial shit is hitting the fan. Second thing for timeliness is making sure that you're, updating your stakeholders in the public and other particular audiences on a regularly scheduled basis while the crisis is happening. If you don't update these particular audiences in a very fluid, agile manner, it's going to continue to cause confusion and distrust and more questions and inquiries, and it's just going to roll and steamroll over time. So make sure you respond in a timely fashion, usually within an hour or 24 hours if you have the time, and you got to make the time. And making sure you update your key stakeholders in the public regularly during this crisis is going to be absolutely critical. Consistency, the fourth item here. When you are inconsistent and you have an inconsistent message across different channels, and you got spokespeople that probably can create confusion and undermine credibility, right? If they're, John says this, Don says that, Mary says that, and Barbara says why, it's going to create 4 different narratives, which creates more inconsistency and goes back to having a lack of transparency, not being prepared. So consistency in the messaging across all people, all channels, all the time is something that you cannot miss on. You got to hit that right square on the head. If there's a lack of alignment between internal and external comms, folks, it can also cause mixed signals and distrust. It's going to be brutal if you don't have the alignment. Consistency in the messaging across channels and alignment with all the internal and external comms, people and channels is another core brick in this foundation of good crisis comms that I'm laying down for you today. Fifth item, empathy and compassion. Probably one of the hardest things to do. Neglecting to acknowledge the impact of the crisis on those that have been infected and the communities can be appeared as very insensitive. So neglecting that acknowledgement is a really big problem. So you have to have that empathy and say, you hear it all the time, right? We apologize that this happened. We want to take the safety of our team in the best interests of our company. You want to make sure you have that level of empathy and compassion and make sure it's honest and legit. And failure to express that empathy and provide that support can lead to a backlash and additional reputational damage, right? If you just come across cold and corporate into a press release statement that is going to come across as you don't really give a shit, then people are going to get even more pissed off, which is going to go back to consistency and transparency and being prepared and kind of reacting on a timely fashion. You don't have that level of empathy and compassion and understanding, you're going to get your ass handed to you. So make sure you have that in place as well. Number 6, ignoring feedback and concerns from any stakeholder can exacerbate the issue and can elongate the crisis and honestly damage relationships. Take the feedback. People are talking to you. They're commenting, they're calling, they're emailing, they're in front of a microphone. They're giving you a lane to which you can respond to in some way, shape, or form. You've got to monitor the conversation, monitor all the other channels, and look at emerging issues and how the narrative may be changing and how the sentiment may be changing. That fluidity in that back and forth ping pong conversation is going to give you intelligence to recast your statements or revise your talking points or look up additional information to support the narrative that you put out there. So making sure you have that listening and feedback mechanism is absolutely critical. Number 7, adaptability and flexibility. This is also, again, they're all critical, but this one is also pretty good. If you are having a rigid adherence to, predefined communication strategies may not be great for an evolving crisis. Like if you're too stuck in your ways and you're dead set that this black pen is a red pen, but the audience is saying, no, it's actually a black pen and here's why, but you stick to that and you don't have the ability to fluidly bridge to a messaging which kind of aligns you a little more closely with the opposition, if that's the case, being so rigid is just going to continue to dig a deeper hole for you, which I've seen companies do over and over and over again. And failing to adapt messaging in those tactics based on those changing circumstances, again, is going to lead to more ineffectiveness when it comes to responding and engaging. So don't be so rigid and stuck in your lane. Be adaptable and flexible, and make sure that your messaging can be adapted and your tactics can change in a fluid manner just to address the situation as it's unfolding. At some point, the dust is going to settle, right? And the news will stop, people will stop asking questions, and people will just go on with their lives, which sometimes may take a day, 2, a week, 3 weeks, a month, 3 years, 10 years. At some point, it's going to end. And that's the time when you need to look back and figure out, what did we do well and what did we punt on that we should have done better on. Neglecting to conduct a thorough post-crisis analysis to identify those lessons learned and those key things and areas of improvement is something you must do. And that looks like getting all the stakeholders in place, whiteboard session, pros and cons, good, the bads, the uglies, and even the ugliers. What could we have done better? Where can we improve? And then more importantly, how do you then encapsulate that in some sort of playbook moving forward so whatever you did prior to this whole thing started around your preparation is adjusted in some way, shape, or form. Not incorporating that feedback and insights gained from a crisis into anything that happens down the line in your communications planning or just reacting to a crisis, again, is going to be detrimental, which really brings you all the way back to the front end of this thing is being prepared. Every crisis situation you go through is going to give you some sort of key learning, whether it be about the industry to which this happened, the channels you were using, the people you had involved, how quickly you responded, how you engaged with the media, the feedback you took, how consistent you were. All those things are going to have some rigid edges to them that you can learn from and apply down the line. So, again, I want to just reiterate these steps: being prepared, being transparent, being timely, being consistent, having empathy and compassion, listening to that feedback, being adaptable and flexible, and finally that that crisis, post-crisis evaluation is absolutely critical to making sure that you do things better the next time. So I hope these 8 tips helped you out. Love to hear from you all. You can always hit me up on the socials at Big ID or donmartelli@gmail.com, or hit the website in some way, shape, or form. I'd love to hear your comments and thoughts on things you've learned as you worked in crisis communications. Or feel free to shoot me a note. I'd love to get your feedback on the things you've learned to help prepare for and address a crisis and learn from it. Thank you for tuning in to the PR Bunker Podcast. I am your host, Don Martelli. Thank you for listening in. You can find us at theprbunker.com, and always feel free to hit me up on the socials at Big ID. Until next time.